Hello, welcome back to another episode of Dan Bakes Stuff. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to take another try at the Indiana old-fashioned sugar cream pie. But this time, what we're going to do is I'm going to make my own crust. And I'm looking at the recipe here for making my own crust. And it's going to be way more work than actually making the filling. So, I hope you want to watch me, are excited to watch me make my own crust. Should be a good time. There's only 4 ingredients, but there's like 14 steps. So I can't wait. I've done this before, but we'll see how it turns out this time because I don't do it enough to be a real expert at making my own crust. So enough of me in the intro. We're gonna make an Indiana old-fashioned sugar cream pie, and I'm gonna make my own crust. Let's get to it. Now, if you know anything about my videos, you'll know that I like to get all the ingredients and the utensils out before I start. And so just to take you around here, you know, I've got my ingredients for the crust ready to roll here. And then over here, I've got some utensils and my mixing bowl here. So we're going to get going on that crust. The first thing we got to do is we got to add the dry ingredients, and the dry ingredients call for 1.5 cups flour. So we're just going to dip my measuring cup into the flour, and then we're gonna take the knife here and top it off so we're more accurate. We use the flat edge of that knife, and then all right, we'll dump it in there, and then it's time to bring in the 1/2 cup. Okay, and there's a 1/2 cup, and then it calls for a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So you got to get your little 1/2 teaspoon out, and we're just going to do this over the flour. That's about a 1/2 teaspoon. There we go. That's nice and easy on the dry ingredients. So we got to sift it all together here. So we're just going to mix it up. We're going to sift it all together. I don't really have a sifter. You're supposed to use a sifter for this. You know what I'm doing? I'm just going to use a wire whisk. Yeah, I know. I'm really and adventurous. It's probably going to screw up the whole crust, isn't it? I don't know, because I've never used like a flour sifter. I've always just used whatever, you know, a whisk, a fork, whatever's having laying around. And so the next part is where the crust gets real interesting. I'm going to have to mix in the recipe calls for 1/2 tablespoon of shortening. And this recipe is like an ancient recipe we have laying around. And it looks like it's from a book that my mother picked up, like pulled out of somebody's coffin. This thing is so old and beat up. It was probably found in an estate sale, I guess. But you know, it's an old book. And it's a nice recipe, and it calls for shortening. And what I don't have is shortening. I usually don't have shortening laying around. So we're just gonna use a half cup of butter, okay? And I'm gonna start, and I'm gonna work in this, oh, there we go. I'm gonna work in this 1/4 teaspoon of butter, not 1/4 cup of butter into this flour mixture. And it's gonna be real flaky at first, and I'll probably fast forward this video because I don't think you really want to see me work in an entire 1/2 teaspoon of butter into this flour salt mixture. Now, before I do that, the thing is, you're supposed to use like a pastry sifter or like a sifting fork. And again, I don't really have all these specific baking and cooking utensils, so I just use what I have on hand. Like, I use the wire whisk for sifting. Well, I'm just going to use this large fork for mixing in this butter rather than using a pastry mixer or a sifting fork or whatever. I have mixed in that first 1/4 cup of butter, and we're getting a bit of flakiness to it. We're going to throw the other 1/4 cup of butter here that I'm substituting for a 1/2 cup of shortening. And at the end of this mixture, the recipe says that you want your flour butter mixture, flour shortening mixture, to be more of sort of like a pea texture to it, you know, like little peas. So we have flakiness here, but when I'm done here, it should be a little bit more of a pellet or pea type mixture. And I'm just gonna work this in, and then I'll get back to you when I'm done with working in this last 1/4 cup of butter. I'm back, and I've mixed in that last 1/4 cup of butter, and I'm definitely getting more of a pellet type consistency to it. I really had to break up those larger pieces of butter to get the flakes out of there and more of a pellet type of texture. And one thing I should have said is you don't really want to melt that butter when you put it in there. I let it cool a little bit at room temperature, but that's it. You really don't want to melt it. It does help to cool it a little bit, but instead of just throwing it there straight out of the refrigerator. But I let the butter cool just a tad, but you definitely don't want to like put it in the microwave and melt it. That's not a good idea. So the next step is we're gonna put in 4 to 5 tablespoons of cold water. And what I've done is I have put an ice cube in the cold water. This is a recommendation from my mother. And so I put an ice cube in the cold water to help keep it nice and cool. And then we're gonna mix it in with the flour, salt, butter mixture. So we'll just do 1 tablespoon at a time. There's tablespoon number 1. And we're just gonna mix it up. And so the recipe, what it calls is to move the sort of mixed, the part that's, I guess you could say congealed. You're supposed to move that to the side. I can't really tell what's been mixed here with just 1 tablespoon. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe we'll do that, I guess. I don't know. So we got that going there. Let's do tablespoon number 2. Stop me if I put too many tablespoons of water in here, please. So there we go. That's tablespoon number 2. And maybe we'll get a little bit more of a congealed mixture that I can put to the side when I add more tablespoons in here. Let's throw another tablespoon in there. That's our 3rd tablespoon. I really shouldn't have dunked the whole tablespoon in there, because now what's happening is we've got a flour water mixture forming on the tablespoon. And it's turning it into a bit of a mess. All right, let's do tablespoon number 4. Okay. There we go. And there's a bit of a moist area forming on the bottom here. So let's see if we can mix that, get that off the bottom a little bit here with our rubber scraper. It's a rubber scraper, not a spatula. Okay, so that helps a little bit. So that's tablespoon number 4. Let's mix this up a little bit. I don't want to go overboard with the water. We don't want this crust to be too, I don't know, too soft. It still needs to maintain its structure. Okay, but as I mix this, it's really, okay, we're really getting to the part where we can divide up the mixed parts with the dry parts here. Let's see if I'm able to do that. Okay, got the harder stuff on one side, and I'm just going to throw in 1 more tablespoon of ice water here and just put that in the unmixed part and see if that does the trick. Oh yeah, that's definitely, I definitely like I like the 5 tablespoons instead of the 4 tablespoons for the water mixture. And I'm definitely, this is coming together. Just need to make sure we get the still drier, looser parts mixed in with the more moist parts. I'm gonna put this ice water to the side. I think it's served its purpose. So this is really starting to mix up here. I'm getting pretty satisfied with the texture. And at this point, I'm getting ready to just start forming this into a ball with my hands, and that's the next step. We're gonna form this into a nice ball with my hands, and And we're just gonna, and then after that, we're gonna really form its shape. And I can't wait to show you what I'm gonna use in exchange of a roller pin. I'm gonna use something different in exchange of a roller pin because I don't have a roller pin. Like I said, I don't have all of the, you know, the proper ingredients. I'm not, you know, I'm getting, this video series is sort of me getting back into baking, and I don't have everything you need. And so as you've seen, I don't have a pastry blender. I don't have a blending fork. I just use a large fork. Maybe I should get an even larger fork. That's still not that big of a fork. And so I don't have all of the fancy ingredients, and I just use what I have on hand. And as you can see so far, I'm pretty happy with what that's forming into. I've got my nice ball here of dough. I'm gonna get up any stragglers in the bowl here, and we're just gonna form this into a nice ball. And then I think it's gonna be time to flatten it out. And the best thing to do to flatten this out is you wanna have a, it's nice to have one of those like pastry cloths. You know what? I don't have a pastry cloth. So we're just gonna go straight onto the countertop here. And you need to spread flour on your countertop to prevent it from sticking. And we're gonna roll this out. It's gonna make it a lot easier when we have to transfer it over to the pie pan. So I'm just sprinkling a little bit of flour here, okay? And that's how we're gonna do this. We're just gonna spread it out. Yeah, let's start forming this baby into a crust, okay? So we're gonna flatten it out to about a half inch of thickness, okay? Oh. All right, and then you're gonna have these ends that are gonna pull apart, and you just wanna pull those back together so you can keep a nice, solid and connected pie crust. Oh, all right, yeah, I'll bring those together. There we go. Okay, now, let's bring in the rolling pin. It's time to bring in the rolling pin. And my rolling pin is a water bottle. Yep, it's a nice round water bottle. And I've done this before. It works pretty well. Now when you roll, you want to roll from the center out. Okay, that's just going to create a lot more of an even crust for you. And this crust over on this end, it's struggling to stay together a little bit. So let's bring it together. There we go. And this is something I could probably fast forward through as well, because you don't need to see me roll this baby all the way out. There's just something, before I do that, there's just something so satisfying about making your own crust. I don't know, because you just feel the hard work that goes into this, as opposed to getting a pre-made crust from your grocery store refrigerated section, or maybe one of those graham cracker crusts, which I did with my first sugar cream pie. There is just something more satisfying about this experience of making your own crust. It does take a lot of time. I mean, I don't know how long this video is getting at this point. I'm sure you're tired of the length, but it does take a lot of time. But in the end, I'm going to be pretty satisfied with it. I'm going to keep working on this, and we're going to skip ahead. It's time to transfer this baby into the pie pan. And I actually tried this once already, but what happened is that it was too small. It was too oval shaped, and I've rolled it a little more. And to sort of transfer this, we're just going to roll it around my ad hoc rolling pin here. And then I'm going to bring in the pie pan. And we're just going to drop it in there and unroll this. And this is a much better fit than the previous attempt. This isn't the most even crust, but I think it's gonna work, okay? And we just need to put it loosely into this pan. I don't know what your pie pans are like, but I feel like this pie pan has kind of thick lip. And so it requires me to make the crust pretty thick. So we're just gonna spread this out a little bit along the edge so we can get full coverage. And typically this pie pan is large enough that there's enough filling that it doesn't go all the way to the top. And you have a nice thick crust. And it makes the pie, I guess, a little shallow, but we can live with that, you know? So there we go. We've got the crust up here. And the recipe actually calls to fold under the pie to give a little more thickness. I don't really know if I have enough thickness on the edge to fold under. It does help prevent the edges from getting so, I don't know, so burnt when you fold it under. But I just don't have a lot of length to work with because of the way this ended up spreading out. I'm just going to do, I'm just going to cut the edges a little bit here on the longer ends. Don't tell your mother I did this, but we're just going to transfer it over to these ends here. We're going to mix it in. Give ourselves a little bit more thickness. We're going to just kind of blend it in with the rest of the ends here. I've done this before. You know, I'm sure it's not the recommended thing, but this is a very low budget cooking show. Things are gonna happen that maybe you won't see a professional do, okay? Because I'm not a professional. I'm just a guy in his apartment kitchen making pie. So the last thing we're gonna do here is we're gonna fold the edges under these thin areas. We're gonna fold it under. And then just a tad. Yeah, there we go. And this is where my ad hoc method falls apart. Because those added crust areas, I mean, they blend in when you cook. They're not folding in very well. I'm just going to fold that in. These areas. Yep. Here we go. Not the greatest fold-in job. Definitely not the greatest folding in job. Oh God, what did I do? Okay, there we go. Actually, let's just take a little water. There we go. Add a little water here. Help it blend in with the surrounding area. Okay, there we go. There's my crust with some first aid. And then we're going to get to the filling next. Oh, God, you just saw that crust fall off.